Today is election day. It is April the 4th, and we've got an open mayoral race. We've got ballot question 20, the Park Hill Golf Course. We've also got all 13 city council positions up for a vote as well. And for a bit of a preview about what to expect, we've got Kyle Clark here with us. Hi, Kyle. Welcome back to the box.
Oh, it's just exciting to be here. It's election day in the city. The excitement is palpable. Which means you can palpate it. But no, the excitement is not palpable because very few people are participating in the mayoral election. 24 hours ago, the turnout was at something like 14%, which is pretty paltry even for a municipal election. So maybe we creep up to the 1 in 4 participation rate of 25%. Who knows? We can hope.
Fingers crossed on that.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, you have time to vote. You got till 7 p.m. Go in person. You cannot obviously drop off your mail ballot at this point. But Kyle, can I set the stage for us? Obviously, I would imagine that the mayoral race is the big thing we're watching for tonight.
Absolutely. You're going to have 17 names on the ballot, 16 of whom are still running. Don't vote for Kwame Spearman. That's not a personal judgment. The man's dropped out. So there's 16 folks running for mayor, and it's about to go down to 2 with the runoff. And I think some folks have just decided that they're going to wait for other people to pick the 2 finalists for them. Again, my standard caveat applies. You may not like the last 2 choices that are left. You may not like what they're serving for dinner. So if you want to have a role in that, you need to vote by 7 o'clock tonight. There's a pretty decent chance that the folks who make the runoff will be very closely ideologically aligned. There may not be a lot of policy differences between the 2 of them, which could be interesting. We could know, tonight, tomorrow morning, the direction of Denver policy-wise, if it turns out that 2 people who make the runoff largely agree on things.
And also, maybe an important caveat to the fact that we've got such low voter participation at this point, there's probably even less of an idea about where this might be going, right?
In terms of who makes the runoff?
Who makes the runoff?
I would say so. I mean, at this point, the most recent public polling of the race was the poll by 9 News, our partners at the Gazette, Colorado Politics, MSU Denver. And that poll is more than a month old. That poll was from the beginning of February, and it showed essentially a 10-way dead heat. The only internal poll by a candidate's campaign that I've seen released was one very, very early on by Debbie Ortega's campaign that showed her with a sizable advantage that did not show up in our polling. Here's the deal. There are campaigns with the money to poll this race. They're not releasing the numbers for a reason. It's because they're not favorable to them. Doesn't mean that they're not leading or they're not close to the lead, but you don't want to put out a poll. If you're, let's say, you're considered a front runner, you don't want a poll that shows you up by 3. You know what I mean? You want a poll that shows you up by 10 or 15 or something like that to build some momentum. And if you're somebody who is thought to be a little bit further back in the pack, you want a poll that shows you leading or tied with the front runners or whatever. So if those polls existed, we would see them. Like, there'd be chatter about them. They'd be out there, and they're just not out there, which indicates that the internal polling suggests that this is a very tight race as well.
And we had, 58% undecideds at that last?
58% undecided in our last poll, which again was in the field beginning of February. So we've reached the deciding point. It's time to un or what or get off the pot, and people are going to have to make a choice, or they can choose to sit on the sidelines, and then we'll figure the percentages out from there. But what we're looking at is a situation where essentially a pretty small number of people are going to pick the 2 finalists to become mayor of Denver to go into this runoff. Again, it's the first open race in 12 years. The reason that 27 people expressed interest in this race, now down to 16, is because this is not a job that comes open every 4 to 8 years. This is a potential job for 12 years for somebody, and it's a job that has immense power. And you can make a really good case that the mayor of Denver has more sway over affairs in this state than the governor does because of how much power the legislature has, the state legislature, versus Denver City Council, which is really it's a weak unit compared to the mayor.
Well, speaking of the city council, 13 candidates, 13, I should say, spots open, all 13 currently open. What are the big things to watch for in the city council races?
So there are a number of progressive candidates that, while they're not running as a formal slate, they've worked together quite a bit in terms of their messaging and their themes and that kind of thing. And think along the lines ideologically of Councilwoman Candy Sidabaka from District 9. So hard left, progressive left, DSA, Democratic Socialist left, like that kind of thought process. Right now, they have 1 vote on council with Candy Sidabaka. Does that become 2, 3, 4, 5? It's possible. Now, Candy Cibacca's got a tough race on her hands. She's running against a candidate who's heavily backed by developers. Another candidate who's kind of a protege of Michael Hancock, so it's a three-way race there in District 9. But that'll be one thing that we'll be watching for tonight as well, which is can the one true blue progressive vote on Denver City Council become 2, 3, 4? Can she hold on to her seat?
And do we have any indications on that side of things?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, just true, lick your finger, stick it in the wind. I mean, I've heard the candidates in that race. I don't think any of the candidates in that race have polling on it. Because I talked to one of the better funded candidates who was just like, you don't happen to have any polling on my race, do you? I do not have polling on your race, no. So now there's some candidates in that race that have some decent name ID, which, again, in a large, wide open race. Now I'm talking city council at large now, okay? For the city council at large race, you've got some well-known names there that maybe that's enough to get them across the finish line in such a crowded race with such low voter participation. Penfield Tate has been in city politics for 30 years or so. Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez is coming out of the state legislature to run for city council. So those are two pretty well-known names. And then there's that progressive slate that's kind of got their little thing going on. And of course, a number of these progressives are running against incumbents. Denver reelects a lot of incumbents. So it's tough to get an incumbent out of office. That was one thing that was so noteworthy about Candy Cibacca's win 4 years ago, is that she knocked off the former city council president, Albus Brooks, protege of the mayor. Somebody that a lot of people thought was going to be in the race for mayor this year if he had stayed on city council. Instead, Candy Cibacca bumps him off council. He's gone to work for a developer builder for the last 4 years.
If there's one, is there a bellwether within city council to give us an idea about where things might head? Is it District 9? Is there another one?
Boy, I don't know. I would hate to say that any one is a bellwether for the others. Obviously, the one city council race that I'm watching really closely is Candy Cibacca's race, because it was such a big moment in city politics when she won. And she's been such a different type of presence on city council. She's constantly mixing it up with her peers on city council. She's often the lone no vote on things. And it'll be interesting to see whether people in her redrawn district, which now includes parts of Park Hill that used to belong to Chris Herndon's district, whether folks are into that type of leadership, whether they want somebody who is that far on the left, or whether they're looking for more of like a centrist, how to describe it, business-backed Dem. You know, whether they want a business-backed Dem who kind of is going to go along with the rest of city council, or whether folks choose to kind of expand upon that small little, foothold of democratic socialism on city council. It's interesting. I mean, Aurora has more democratic socialists on city council than Denver does, and they're a city that's run by Republicans currently. It's wild.
Fascinating.
So I don't know. That'll be one thing that I'll be watching in addition to the mayor's race.
So we'll get an idea for the alignment of where things shake up as well. You mentioned development backed. Of course, there's ballot issue 20, which is the Park Hill Golf Course.
Yep.
Does it become a park open space, something like that, or does it become affordable housing or housing in general? Do we have an idea about where that's going right now?
It's tough. It's tough to tell. There's certainly a lot of money behind the 2-0 ballot measure. But, if money could buy you everything, Elon Musk would have friends and a functional website, and he has neither. So at the end of the day, I think there might be something else at play there. And people in the citywide have already put one stop on the development of that project when they forced it to go to a citywide vote a couple years ago. So I think there's decent awareness citywide about that issue. And at the end of the day, I think if people are really looking at this, not just from a knee-jerk, like, yay development, no development, yay park, nay park, or whatever. There's a more nuanced question about whether the deal that is being given to West Side developers and its partners, or West Side partners, is a good enough deal, or whether the city should go back to the drawing board and try to extract more from somebody else. But that could be a years-long process because of how complicated the structures are around that land. So the idea that if people say no on Park Hill development, you got to know it's not a park the next day, right? It's an open space, which they allow people to walk their dogs on and occasionally run. And two, the thing you got to know is that it might take some time because the property is owned by the developer. they're not just going to walk away. They're going to want to get their money's worth out of that.
They put money into it, right?
Yeah, well, and they've put a lot of money into convincing everybody to get on board with this development plan. So if it fails, it's not going to become a park tomorrow. We have a better idea of what a yes vote looks like. If you're looking for more information on that, Marshall Zellinger's done a great piece. It's linked in our politics section on 9news.com that explains what are the things that are promised and guaranteed to happen if it passes, and then what are things that are mainly just kind of like, we hope we'll have this, like a grocery store. People in that neighborhood want a grocery store. Could it go there? Well, the thought is that it'd be part of the development if somebody wants to come in and put a grocery store there. So there's a little bit more nuance than just here's this raft of promises that we're going to get. But that's the Park Hill development question. It's a fascinating one.
And the reason you said it's fascinating, to me, and this is perhaps anecdotal here, it does seem like there's a bit of a battle for the soul of the city embedded within that question. Have you gotten that sense as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some people are trying to kind of simplify it into that as if like, well, if we develop the Park Hill golf course, then that's going to lick our housing problem. And it's like, no, it won't. I mean, it's going to be a few hundred units. I think there's going to be a few hundred affordable units there in terms of the absolute lowest income levels. I think there's 40 of those units. So the idea that, Denver has to add tens of thousands of housing units, it's not going to be all on the Park Hill golf course. This is not like you're playing like Sim City when we were kids and you just build an Arco and you put 30,000 people in it. All right, like that's not what they're going to do on the Park Hill golf course. There's going to be some housing there, but it's not going to solve Denver's issues. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue, and you got to step back and realize this is about what happens in one neighborhood to one piece of land, and the whole city's voting on it. That's weird, right?
That is weird.
That's weird. But the reason that that's happening is because opponents put it on the ballot. And people said, yeah, we all want to vote on this. Could you imagine if every big city development project was voted by everybody in the city? It'd be like Tabor for zoning. You know what I mean? Where like everybody got to weigh in on every little thing that happened. And the exact same thing would happen as it happens with Tabor, which is nobody would approve jack squat. And everything would just sit the way that it is. But in this case, that piece of property does go up for a citywide vote. It's a really strange, interesting occurrence. And I'll be very interested to see how that one turns out.
And give us an idea about when we might expect some of those results. I know we're going to get two fairly big vote dumps early on, right?
Yep. We're going to get, of course, you'd ask me timing off the top of my head. I want to say it's 7 o'clock, and then it's 8:30, and then I think 10 o'clock, and then I believe midnight is when they're going to send people home for the day if they're not done counting. I would not be surprised if at least one of the two mayoral runoff positions is not decided by the end of the night.
Wow. So we really might not know until tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning.
And depending on how the count goes, maybe a little bit later. I mean, I think it really depends on, are people voting today or are they voting tomorrow? Pardon me, that's not correct. Are they voting yesterday or are they voting today? If the votes are coming in the day before Election Day, that gives them more time to process them and get them into that first dump. But if a lot of Election Day votes come in today, then that's what would be the delay. But if people are just not interested in voting in this first round of elections and there's not a ton of votes that come in on Election Day, then it'll be sewn up faster. Bear in mind, too, yesterday, Monday, sunshiny, beautiful, Tuesday, Election Day, less so. So maybe people are like, do I really want to bike that ballot down to the drop box? Yeah, democracy will be fine without me. Like if people go that route, then maybe it sews up quicker.
Could I also say, too, and again, this may be a little bit of anecdotal insight that I've gathered a little bit, is the amount of candidates on the ballot, 16 mayoral candidates, which requires people to do probably more research than usual. Do you think that could be off-putting for some voters?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that there's probably a good number of people that are like, I don't want to make an uninformed choice, and I respect that. I mean, here's the thing: if you're sitting on a ballot, the thing you got to remember is you don't have to vote the whole ballot. You can vote on whatever you want. You can leave whatever else you want blank. So if you care about the Park Hill golf course, but you don't really know about the mayor's race, you don't want to vote in the mayor's race, don't. If there's a city council race you're interested in, vote that. Leave the other one off. You're not required to vote the entire ballot. And same goes with the city council. City council at large, you get 2 picks. If somebody goes, I only like one of these people, or I only know, vote for one. They're not going to disqualify your ballot if you do that. But with the mayor's race, we've tried to make it easy as we can. On 9news.com, you can go to the mayoral vote guide. You can look at each person's positions in turn. Which I'll be honest with you, if you've waited till Election Day, unless you got the day off from work, you probably don't want to do that because there's 16 of them. But perhaps an easier path to take you down to voting town is to click on an issue that matters a lot to you, whether it's public transportation, whether it is the environment, whether it's how the city is policed, crime and safety, that kind of thing, whether it's the homeless crisis. And there you can click on the one issue and you'll see all of the candidates all together, and then maybe you can find somebody who connects with you on the issue that matters to you most.
Any predictions, any sort of insight for tonight? No.
No, I mean, here's it. I mean, for the
I understand.
For the mayor's race, I mean, it's tough to bet against money. You know, again, you know, money does not buy everything. You know, because you look at Twitter and Elon Musk. But it's tough to bet against money, and right now Kelly Brough and Mike Johnston have a lot of it. So I think we are about to find out if money can get you over the line and into the runoff. And I think if that happens, then there will be some really interesting conversations about whether Denver's Fair Elections Fund, this is the first go-round for that voter-approved public financing, whether that really did what it was intended to do, which is to get people into politics who otherwise couldn't afford to do it, or whether it just lavished a bunch of money on people who already had a ton of political connections, and then outside independent expenditures came in and propped those people up even further. So if that happens, if it's the first go-round of the Fair Elections Fund and Denver taxpayers paid a bunch of money to help people who already have a bunch of money through political connections win the race, that'll be an interesting conversation going forward.
So a lot to, we've got low voter participation, but a lot at stake tonight, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because bear in mind, there's been so much conversation about, oh, there's so many people in the race. Oh, this ballot's so overwhelming. It's like, well, okay, chill out. Take a step back. Like, what's at stake? The mayor of Denver is an immensely powerful position. In the ecosystem of the city, the mayor is way more powerful than the governor is on the state level. Who is the mayor matters. You know, people like or dislike Michael Hancock. Why? Because he matters. Because the mayor has immense power over solving the issues that the city has, working on big new projects, taking the city in new directions. So this stuff matters. So I would just encourage people, like, don't be overwhelmed by the fact that there are a lot of choices. You have a lot of choices. There's somebody for everybody on that mayoral ballot. I mean, whether you want, an arch conservative or whether you want a socialist, like, you've got options. They're there on that ballot for you. And I just don't want to hear any complaints on people who didn't vote in the first round if they don't like the two choices in the runoff. That's all. You're
just saying there's the golden corral of politics here.
No, it's true. The scientific studies show the more choices people have, the less likely they are to be satisfied with any one of them. This goes with ketchups, and it goes with mayoral candidates. Because there's two, you pick one, you're like, I'm sure it's fine, and I bet the other one is worse. There's 16, you pick one, you love it, you're like, I bet you one of those other 15 ketchups was fantastic. No, it's true. That's actual scientific behavior. People always think that there's a better choice out there for them if there's that many, and sometimes that can kind of cause analysis paralysis. So don't have analysis paralysis. Vote.
You got till 7 o'clock. Kyle, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.